What's up guys, how's it going? So, last week I uploaded my first ever YouTube video to this channel and it was a hardware review. And since then lots of people have said, oh cool, so you're going to be doing a lot of product reviews on the channel. Actually, that's not the plan at all. What I actually plan to do is a channel that is an expression of everything I love about video games. I thought I'd make a proper introduction video today just to give you guys a bit of background about who I am, where I'm from, and how I got into video games. When I was in high school, I was an avid reader of the official Nintendo magazine. Now, when I say avid reader, I used to go to the store first thing in the morning and buy 2 copies because I wanted one to read and one for mint conditions. And obviously my love of the magazine turned into the desire, the wish, the dream to work in the games industry, to write for Nintendo magazine. That was a bit of a pipe dream at the time and people really didn't think it was realistic. I grew up in a not so great part of London, and honestly I don't think the outlook for most kids there is particularly optimistic. But when I was 14 years old, somewhere around there, my friend Jonathan, who's my best friend at school, he managed to get a work experience placement at the official Nintendo magazine. One day I see him walking out of school and I wanted to ask him if he wanted to hang out that evening. It turns out he was going to Nintendo magazine for a photo shoot, so I asked him if the magazine staff wouldn't mind, could I tag along? This would be amazing for me to come and meet all these people that I've idolized for so long. So he called the magazine and they said yes. And so I tagged along and went there. Back then, if I remember how I felt, on the train, on the way to Nintendo magazine, I was excited to go to Nintendo magazine, man. I couldn't believe it. So when I got there, we did the photo shoot. Actually, I will try and find the issue of the magazine that was in and show you guys the picture from that day. I basically spent the entire evening trying to convince the then editor of the magazine, Dave McComb, to allow me to come back through my summer holiday break for work experience. Eventually, he said yes, and I couldn't believe it. I thought if there's ever been an opportunity for a kid in a crappy school in a crappy area in London to make something of himself, this has to be the moment. So what was amazing about that time was the editor, Dave, really just for allowing me to come into the office. I think I said to him before that I credit him with having basically changed my life. Even now, 20 years later on, it really puts a stone in my throat just to talk about it, because it basically meant the world to me at the time, and everything I've done since then was because of that moment. So throughout the summer holidays, I worked my butt off and they actually gave me a project to work on, which I couldn't believe because I thought they were just gonna let me sit in a corner and occasionally make them cups of tea, and believe me, I made plenty of cups of tea for those guys. They were actually working at the time on what we call a one-shot magazine, a side magazine called the Pokemon Master Guide. They wanted me to play through the game using the guide they had written and fact check it, make sure everything was good. And I think they ended up using a lot of the stuff I wrote, so I was super proud of that. And then the magazine came out. They didn't tell me this until the magazine published, but in the staff panel, they printed my name, and I was just blown away by it all. And so what happened was, after that, I went to college. The magazine was gracious enough to actually kind of invent a part-time position for me to come in and help out with the tips and cheats section of the magazine. The guy who was in charge of sort of the tips and cheats of that magazine and other magazines, his name's Alex. I cannot thank Alex enough for believing in me and being a real friend actually at the time, and really showing me the ropes, teaching me everything I needed to know to just get started, get my foot in the door. And so I was a part of Alex's team of tips writers, and by the time I left college, the magazine was in the hands of a wonderful man named Tim Street. And at the age of 17 years old, almost 18 years old, he offered me a full-time position on the Nintendo magazine as the tips editor. I was now the person in charge of the entire tips and cheats section and player's guide section of the magazine that I had idolized my entire childhood. Such a life-changing opportunity to be offered that job. And, so there I was this young kid from East London that dreamed of working at this video game magazine that I used to sneak into classes, there must have been tens, if not hundreds of thousands of other kids just like me who idolized the magazine and everybody who worked there. Yet somehow it was me who managed to be the one kid that snuck his way into the magazine, and that, boys and girls, was when the real dreams started to come true. I had to pinch myself. I was there at the magazine when the GameCube came. I remember reading the magazine when the N64 came out and just melting at the thought of being able to see an N64 in a glass case before it was out. And now I was one of the guys at the official Nintendo magazine covering the launch of the machine that was the sequel to the N64. So that was enormous for me. I went to my first ever E3 show. I'd been reading E3 coverage for years and just couldn't imagine me one day sat on a plane flying over the Atlantic to go to E3. And 2004 was a special year actually, because it was the year where they announced the DS prototype. So I got to play a prototype version of a Nintendo console. I got to meet Miyamoto twice. I went to Japan and visited the Nintendo HQ. I interviewed one of the Sonic creators, Yuji Naka. It almost doesn't feel like a true story. In 2005, roughly 5 years or so after I joined the magazine, EMAP Publishing, the company that I was working for, lost the license to Future Publishing. And at the time, that seemed like a real disaster for me. I applied for a job at the official Xbox magazine. And then came my next victim. Gavin was the editor of the magazine. And after a 1-hour interview that I thought was an absolute disaster, he called me up and gave me the job as the reviews editor. Now, that was incredible within itself, but what was particularly uncanny about that is Xbox magazine is published by Future Publishing. And so inadvertently, I ended up sat just a few feet away from the team that would be in charge of making the new Nintendo magazine under its new publisher. As well as working on Xbox magazine, I immediately started working on a freelance basis for the new magazine. And so my contribution to this magazine that I had such a legacy with continued. So I worked on official Xbox magazine for a year before the company transitioned me over to a multi-format website called CVG. There I was on CVG with Gavin as the editor. Of course, being on a website, a multi-format website, it really expanded my horizons, and I just kept realizing more and more dreams. More E3 shows, that was amazing. Hard work on the website, but incredible to be there and just be a part of the bleeding edge of what's happening in video games that week. I was among the first people in the world to go hands-on with the Wii, which, again, the cutting edge of a new Nintendo launch, and I just, it was living the dream, and I was still young, I was only 24 years old when all this was happening, and is incredible. And so I worked on CVG for another 5 years while freelancing for Nintendo magazine. I moved to America in 2010. I was out here working from home for CVG under my good friend Andy Robinson, who I'm still really good friends with today. We keep in contact, we talk so much. So he's a guy who I actually hope to get on the channel soon. I was working from home for the first 5 or 6 years as their US editor. So I was putting up news on a daily basis with the CVG website, as well as freelancing for a number of other outlets, including, of course, Nintendo magazine. I've freelanced for the magazine right up until its final issue, which was published on October 14, 2014. And interesting fact, actually, in that issue, they did a sort of commemorative feature on some of the more prominent contributors to the magazine. And in that, they had actually worked out that given the amount of time that separates my first ever article for the magazine and my final article right before it closed, I ended up being the longest serving writer on the official Nintendo magazine. So, wow, again, that kid who dreamed of being on the magazine, if you had gone back to the 14-year-old version of me and said that you will actually end up going down in the history of Nintendo Magazine as the longest serving writer in the magazine's history. I would have probably died, just immediately died. I continued to work for CVG until 2015 when Future Publishing decided to shut down CVG as well. Now, that was quite a sad time for me, but actually, again, I embraced it as an opportunity. I'd been writing at that point since I was 16 years old, and at that point I was 32 years old, and thought, maybe it's time for a change. Maybe it's time for me to break away and try some new stuff. So fast forward to the present now, and I have a wonderful home, a beautiful wife, an amazing little daughter named Zelda, of course. But I really miss being in video games. I watch IGN's podcasts, video casts on YouTube every week. NVC, GameScoop, those are two of my favorite channels, and I watch them every week, and I'm so jealous of those guys. Like, they seem like fantastic people, all of them, right? But I'm so jealous, so envious of them still being there, still doing, still living the life that I was living some 5-6 years ago. That's where this channel comes in. So I just want to be a part of video games again. I don't know to what capacity this will allow me to do that, but at the very least, what I want to do is for this channel to be an expression of my love of all things video games. You're gonna see everything on this channel from Famicom disk system and N64 DD drives and other rare retro stuff I would love to show you guys, and I will be showing you guys in the coming months, right up to the RTX 2080 ray tracing in Battlefield 5. I have a Japan trip that I'm gonna show you guys around some really awesome stuff in Japan. I have a couple of console repairs I'm gonna do soon. A couple of my old rare retro consoles aren't working properly. If I cover any events for other publications, I'm just gonna try my best to video everything, my whole life in video games, and try and be a part of the conversation again. So guys, this video is probably a little longer than I wanted it to be. I can't believe the life I've already lived. It's almost fairy tale to talk about. I'm incredibly proud of my history, as you can tell. And I think this is another opportunity for me to say thank you to all of the people that believed in me over the years and helped me to make it. So thanks guys, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.